Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sencast and the managing director of B Squared. We started the podcast a few years ago to help improve knowledge around SEND. Yes, there is lots of stuff you can go and read, but we're all very, very busy. And we created the Sencast to try and help schools be more inclusive, to really bring to the front training in CPD and increase that knowledge around SEND. The Sencast is also a great way to get the same consistent message to schools and parents. This week I was joined by Dr. Sarah Moseley and Ginny Bootman, and they were back to record another episode in their series around literacy. And podcasting with them is literally like herding kittens. They're a little bit childish, but we got there. We had lots of fun. It took us 3 hours to record a 1 hour episode because lots of talking beforehand and lots of talking afterwards. So, for those who don't know Dr. Sarah Moseley, Sarah is an educational consultant specialising in reading and self-esteem, and Ginny is currently a Senko of 4 schools in Northamptonshire, and she talks at various events, and they've both written books for Senkos. In this episode, we're discussing hearing the patterns and the phonological awareness in literacy development. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. We are the assessment people. We are known for helping schools to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And over the last few years, we've developed our assessment software to be much more inclusive by not adding in the SEN, but adding in the other people, those non-SEN pupils. So you can use the whole software with all pupils in primary schools. And the system has different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data, comparing your SEND pupils and your non-SEND pupils really, really simple. It's one big, simple data set. And it also reduces teacher workload by only having to use one system. And our new AI features around report writing saves teachers even more time. And obviously, by just using one system, it's going to save money. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our software and how it can help you. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing hearing the patterns and the importance of phonological awareness in literacy development. This week's my guests are Dr. Sarah Moseley and Ginny Bootman. Sarah is an educational consultant specialising in reading and self-esteem. And as an educational consultant, she supports schools to raise outcomes for all learners, helping schools turn theory into practice. Ginny is currently a Senko of 4 schools. She has been a teacher for a very long time, a senior manager and head teacher. And both Sarah and Ginny have written books to support professionals. Welcome back, Sarah and Ginny.
Hello.
Hi, Dale.
I think we can start dropping your surnames. It's just Sarah and Ginny. Everyone knows.
Nice.
Yeah,
like
we're happy with that. Good enough for Adele, good enough for Madonna. Come on, let's put ourselves in that bracket, Sarah.
Absolutely. Beyonce.
Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
Nice.
Sting-ish. So this is the second episode in this series around literacy and how to help all learners to succeed. And in this episode, we're moving on to hearing the patterns, phonological awareness in literacy and development. For someone who's never been a teacher, but I'm parent to 2 teenagers, did music with mummy and all those sorts of things, I only learned about phonological awareness through this podcast. It is such an important aspect, yet the term only seems to exist within schools. Why is that?
I think even actually the term phonics initially, when that kind of first started to be used, it was really not something that people knew very much about. And I think it's that whole thing around the importance of meta language, isn't it? Actually, just the terms aren't necessarily used. And I think the more that we start using them in school, actually, then we should start just using them generally, so our learners know what they mean as well. And you know, it is something which is really crucial for literacy development. It's, you know, when we think about phonological awareness, it's that ability to hear and detect and manipulate sounds in spoken language. And you know, actually, what more do we need to be able to do in terms of moving forward our literacy development than have a secure foundation within that skill?
Cool. So before we move on, what is phonological awareness? What is there a correct time of just saying phonological? Do you just say that, like phonics? Is it just phonological?
See, Dad put me on the spot. Phonological awareness, I guess it's that you're aware that you can hear the sounds, that you're aware that there are distinct sounds. I think that kind of comes back to a story I think I may have told in the first part. Just my son told me recently, and he's 9, that he had only just started to really hear individual words in songs. Before, he kind of heard the melody and he sort of heard the rhythm and rhyme of the language, and maybe it sounded probably a bit like I do when the song comes on the radio. I think we were just chatting, Dale, about the fact that you change the words. I change the words without realising. I know there's a kind of rhythm. I kind of work out the words that might go with it. It's a bit difficult for people that are in the car with me if it's in a car, but actually you're aware. You're aware that it's made up of individual parts that go together to create the spoken language.
Peter Kay did that famous misheard song lyrics on one of his shows. And it is kind of, there is the word it is, but you can substitute it for actually is, what did I hear? I think there's one song which says pork pie in it. I don't actually know what the actual word would be if it's not pork pie. And there's other songs I'm just going, and it is, yeah. So it's interesting. So if we listen to music, we have that rhythm and then we use the words we know. But often it might be a brand new word or it's a context that actually maybe we haven't come across yet. So obviously the more knowledge we have around those words, the better we are at doing that.
I think there is also a fear, phonological awareness. Oh, what's that? And I think it's taking away that fear. And actually it's what parents are doing all the time, isn't it? It's about repetition. It's about rhymes. It's about alliteration. And I think it is really, really interesting when we bring it back to ourselves as individuals, going back to singing songs, probably from our youth that we remember, which I find fascinating. Can't sometimes remember something from today, but I can remember lyrics from when I was 15, from a Duran song. But actually, if I sing along with a contemporary of mine, we all seem to remember the same bit, and then we go into the la 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 bit, and then we all join in with the same bit again. And I just think it's really, really fascinating, the fact that we do remember them from such a long time ago. So I don't know, Sarah, if you can tell us about that, because I think, like with children, we have those texts that we all love, the Julia Donaldson ones, with the repetitions and, is it from a very, very young age that children do remember?
Yeah, that's all around the kind of the way that our brains work and the way that our brains are wired, that they are actually wired to associate and to remember sounds before letters and words. So actually it's around distinguishing sounds that are important to us. It's about survival, detecting those sounds which are going to keep us safe, detecting the sounds which are going to get us something that we might need, i.e. communicating with someone or hunting for food or whatever. So it's about the fact that it's that kind of very basic kind of human need that you need to know about what's happening around you, distinguishing the sounds outside of you to those within you, so actually, or the sounds that you might make to the sounds that are being made by something else. So that's all of that stuff, which is so key. So our brains they will actually look out and be really readily associating those sounds. And often with the ones that you like, the songs you've sung, is because you also had fun. It is a time where you were having fun around something, but also you were able to remember those lyrics, and you were a bit like, so you got that bit of a rush of, oh, I know this, I'm joining in with something. So there's that kind of, that listening together, that shared interaction with something else, and it really strengthens the connections, which is why for us, thinking about this for our learners, actually giving specific support around thinking about rhythm, rhyme, syllables, alliteration, the way that those kind of sounds go together. Actually, what that does, it helps to rewire the brain. It helps to strengthen those connections. It fires off those kind of synapses. So we are actually getting to a point where that's starting to help within the brain, which makes the skill, move towards automaticity as well. So then you're starting to get that feedback.
I did music with mummies. I was allowed in.
Nice.
And I loved it. I really did love it. And doing all the nursery rhymes. And interesting, I was sitting there going, obviously my child understood that. But I'm looking to think about actually their age and going, actually, did they understand the words? Did they just recognise where we were in the music and the action to take? Were they, although they were saying the sounds of the words, understand what they were words and have a meaning, or you're just making a pattern of sounds with your mouth, and that's just, it's interesting. I look back and going, what was my child's level of understanding in that moment? And it's understanding that actually that rhythm is really important.
Yeah.
And I now sit back and look at that. Is most of the time they sing those sometimes really awful songs on children's TV, sometimes great songs, sometimes catchy. And a lot of the time they're putting it probably to a bit of a music is to help us with that rhythm. If they just said it without the music, it's helping us learn a rhythm with those words. Fitting those words into music gives it a rhythm rather than you just trying to say the rhythm on your own.
And you've got a predictability there. You've got a consistency there. So actually all of that is helping with the learning. And particularly for those learners who struggle and have found literacy difficult, actually what you're doing is you're making it achievable, but you're also giving it. So when you're doing, working with books that have that strong rhythm, or songs, lyrics, actually what you're doing is you're giving them a bit more of a clue. Oh, it might be this word, because they actually kind of an understanding about that as well. But also when you think about the different songs and rhymes and things that we have, like with your children, actually we don't know what someone's going to like. Every brain is so different that's why we need to give that huge kind of broad experience of different kinds of sounds, different kinds of music, because we don't know what will be the thing which engages them, that makes them go, oh, I want some more of that. And it's through that you can then help supporting that understanding and use that as a springboard to further learning. And I think that's the key.
And I think it's similar. I'm likening it to when I have a song I like. I like to hear that song over and over again, or I like to hear songs by the same artist because I've tuned into that. And I think this idea of tuning in is really interesting. And if we go back to young children, when I think about it, when we find a book that a child likes, suddenly the grandparent has the book as well. And there's that sharedness, that we're all enjoying this book together. As you're saying, Sarah, the child is overlearning, overhearing it. And I think this idea of sharing these favourite things is fascinating. And I know when I've been in classrooms with younger children, I love reading a story to them that has a pattern. And I may change. I did one of Julia Donaldson's the other day as a rap, and they were like, it's that book. It's that book. And but it's being done slightly differently, but they tune in. And I love the idea when kind of my turn, your turn, and you whisper that bit and I'll whisper that bit. And there's just this lovely calmness about it because they're used to it. It's back to me and Duran Duran and the lyrics of the songs. Oh, this is a known. And I think changing things slightly, they can still key in, can't they? But there's that, and adding instruments or getting children to kind of do the beat on the table, it all makes it really enjoyable. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Enjoying what they're doing.
We used to read, we had the books, and there was two books, one called Pants and one called More Pants. And they come with a CD. For those who are too young for CDs, that's what we used to have music on. But you used to put that in, and it was Lenny Henry, and there was like 8 tracks. One was him reading it. One of them was doing it in a disco style. One was doing it in like a rock, and it was like, and each one, and it was so much fun. And it helped my girls get the rhythm of the story.
And that also builds up that sensitivity to the structure of sound, because actually we're not going to be able to be aware of or develop those literacy skills. When you get onto phonics, it's about that phonemic awareness, which is one subset of phonological awareness. So it's kind of that's more narrow focus about letters and sounds themselves specifically and individual units. But you're not going to have that if you don't have an interest in what the sounds are doing. So you need that structure first of all, then you need to move on to the individual parts. And actually, when you struggle with the individual parts, you've got to go back to making a beat, keeping a beat, Julia Donaldson, having a rap, all of that stuff, because you've got to have that interest, that, and Ginny was, that shared interaction, that shared space is where learning happens. And it's becoming so difficult in the classroom now to get that with our learners. And I think that's, and if you've got a learner who's in year 4 or year 5 and they're struggling with their literacy, to get that shared space again where it's like, you can take a risk, it's all right, this is going to be fun, very difficult. And I think that's what we need to think about. Actually, all of that stuff with the rhythm and rhyme and playing with words, playing with sound is going to strengthen the connections. And that strengthening of the connections is going to help them towards, with often that over-reliance on constant intervention with just phonics. And it's like, it's not working. And it's like, but actually go back to the fun. Start of the session, keeping the beat, doing all this stuff, then going into the more structured, specific stuff which has to happen. And when they lose that focus, go back to the other bit.
And I think rhyme is really important, isn't it? Because actually rhyme, and actually the fact that you said that word, that's a great word. It might not be a real word. It might be a nonsense word, but actually the idea that everybody can join in and add their bit to what is happening, get enjoying it. And actually you're not right, you're not wrong. It's just about this idea of songs and rhymes. It's just, we need more of it in the world, I think.
And I think as well with that, Ginny, you're helping them to focus on the bit. Why does that rhyme? Why does that not rhyme? Because then you're focusing in on the individual parts of the word and the sound. Then you can play about with that and you can change it about, and then you can make the nonsense words, or you can, and you can have fun and be curious. I wonder what happens if.
And I think you can learn what rhyming is before you understand what rhyming is. Because you hear the songs, you hear it repeat, and you can make up your own word. You play with it. I remember one of my friend's sons got told off because he said a naughty word beginning with F.
Oh, they love that.
And he's like, what? So I found out, and then gave him a whole lecture of why he shouldn't say that word. And he's like, so why did you say it? And he went, I was just trying to find things which sounded like bucket. And he hit the F, which is entertaining. But he was just playing with the sounds, bucket, mucket. And so his dad found it hilarious. The mum completely, but it was just that playing with the sounds, hearing the end of the word, changing that initial. He had no idea what rhyming was at that point, the term rhyme or rhyming, but he was just playing with the sounds and finding different things and joining them together.
And that's the key. That's what you want to do.
And I think also it's about, do you know what? It's not about writing it down. It's not right, everybody, let's all write it down and then let's see if it's spelt correctly. It's like, and let's just, have a verse and a chorus of this song. And let's, as I say, let's all enjoy it for enjoyment's sake. There is learning happening, but actually when we're learning, when we're enjoying, and it's active, let's throw that in as well. Actually, let's be active. Let's stand up. Let's all go. Let's go on a bear hunt. Let's all enjoy the whole kind of event. And I also think there is a real case for. I remember I had children in year 5, 6, and we revisited a squash and a squeeze, and we changed it so much. But someone went, "Are we allowed to do this?" Because that's for the younger children. I'm like, it's for anyone. It's for anyone. It's for all of us. And also let's throw in this sharing books between older and younger, because those older children love playing that part of being the inverted commas teacher. I just think we need to get past the idea that, oh, well, that's for this age children, because they love it. It's like, in the same way, I have never known a set of year 6 children who, if you say, off you go into the reception classroom, they're the first to go in and have a great time in the dressing up, playing with everything in the kitchen. They have the best time ever. And I think we need to take away this kind of this ceiling of, oh, when you move from there then we're moving to a different level of kind of what is expected or accepted.
And I think with that as well, then that's a really good point, is that actually we're not talking about phonological awareness. Not necessarily, it's not known of how important it is, but it is the key predictor of reading success. So actually the data, the research shows that the children that can identify, hear, so it's about hearing them, identifying, manipulate them, deleting them, adding other ones, isolating them. All of those things are skills that need to be practiced, but it doesn't matter what in. So even if they're older and they're doing it, as you were saying there, Ginny, in those really fun books that they had, like comforting to them as well, and were predictable for them and consistent for them, using and actually giving them a choice. We know as soon as you give learners choices, like which one would you like to, well, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be thinking about these sounds. Which book should we use for this? Which words should we play around with, or use AI to help us to develop a rhyme for this or a rap for this? Which would be your favourite? As soon as you start doing that, you're getting that invested engagement and that interest. But also, we know what we need to do. And I think it is that, as Ginny was saying there, it's a lack of knowledge about this is really important. These skills have to be practiced however it is. It's like driving a car. You've got to keep having that kind of skill and that understanding and that foundation of this is how the gears work, which I always struggled with.
I think with sometimes going back to those books you used to read, so maybe you're in top of primary, going back to those, you'll pick up a book and it might be a book that you may have struggled with or you enjoyed, but actually when you go back now, you're seeing so much more in that book.
Okay.
You're seeing the pattern that you didn't see before. The pattern came from somewhere else. Now you're looking at it, you can see the pattern yourself. You're seeing, it's telling you the rhythm to use. But you didn't see it as a child. As a child, when you were younger, someone taught you the rhythm and you used it. As you come back, and I like the Snail and the Whale book.
Yeah, great.
And I start reading it every time, and I look for a rhythm and I can't find it. And suddenly I notice I'm in a rhythm. And there are bits where doesn't seem to be in a rhyme, or I'm struggling with it. And then it gets a bit, and I'm going, oh, I've got it now. And it's like, oh, and I'm in the zone, and I'm rhyming, and it's flowing. But I never have that at the start. And it's interesting. It's that ability that even as adults, we can go in and read things. And I know the worst place for phonological awareness, where it really hurts you, is if you ever go to a church and have to sing a hymn. Because they make the wrong bits long. Mm. And you go there going, oh, okay, it's going to be this word. Then it'll be the long bit, I think. And then, no, this short word is going to get lengthened out. And then the long word will get short. It mucks you up when you go to church. It breaks the rules.
Well, I'm just thinking on that. You made me think then about the books that we used to read. There's an awful lot of weirdos in our neighbourhood. Did anyone have any of these? Oh, honestly. But you just made me think then. And actually, I pulled a few books out and I was just thinking, how actually getting our older learners to choose the poems that they really enjoyed from earlier years, but have them somewhere where they can have a look in the books and see and find the ones, then look at the patterns that you're looking for and look at the sounds. Oh yeah, there's just it's probably quite inappropriate, some of the ones now in here. But I remember my brothers, and they're now 38 and whatever else. And I first started teaching, I took this into school. And actually, my favourite one was I don't want to go to school. And of course, he has to go to school because he's the head teacher. But yeah. It's about, again, having that surrounding opportunity to dip into poetry, have that rhythm and rhyme.
And I think also it's about dipping in and out. So I've got here my joke book. Well, it's not a joke book. So are you ready, Dale? Knock, knock.
Yep. Who's there?
Kook.
Cuckoo.
Do you know you have a real future in Swiss clocks?
Okay. Knock, knock.
Who's that?
This is for you, Ginny.
Oh, who's that?
Little old lady.
Little old lady who?
Didn't know you could yodel.
But once again, it's pulling, isn't it? It's pulling language. It's, and the conversations we have. And I love this instantaneousness. I don't know if that's really a word, but the instantness. And I think it's, once again, it's breaking it back down to simple things, also down to things that we know, and if we are doing a story, sometimes I will do the rhythm to one of the Julia Donaldson stories, just tap it on the table, and the children have to guess without any words, because once again, it's actually hooking them back in, and they're listening, aren't they, Sarah? They're listening desperately, and they go, da, da, da. Oh, I know what it is.
I always like this one. It's a different one. I do this one. Ginny, knock, knock.
Who's there?
I eat mup.
I eat mup who? Oh. Oh, you are so wasted on this. Oh, he's literally fallen off his chair with his hilarity.
Dale, anything that involves poo, absolutely, you're on to a winner.
But we didn't say that word.
We so didn't.
We said mup, followed by who. You then rearrange all of that and go, my poo. But that's, again, that phonological awareness is what makes that joke work.
Yes. Yeah.
And understanding that, and understanding how you can play around with sounds and make it and create those differences is really important. And I think what's really key is that it's just that we just know that actually targeting phonological awareness has been shown over so many different pieces of research and documents that actually it can improve literacy outcomes. So I think if we just have that as that's just what we know. So that's just known. Therefore, these are all the things that would be fabulous to support that. So when you've got 5 minutes, or if you're working on something and the engagement's lost or the interest is lost, bring it back to singing, tapping, clapping, whatever it is. And for families to know that as well.
Yeah.
When they're out and about.
I wonder if you can get Jolly Phonics on Spotify. That's the thing, is when we all had CDs, and we used to listen to, and I used to get in the car, and
I know,
it was entertaining.
Yes.
When you get in the car without your kids, the stereo comes on, ants on your arm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, not this. But it was always in the CD player or the other ones. And I wonder, as CDs disappearing, how are children accessing those things? Are parents able to access those fun songs in such a quick, easy way that you put that CD in the car and it's there and you can all sing along? Can we still do that in such an easy way?
And the problem actually with that, Dale, is how we're doing it is through our phones. So the problem is, as soon as you are bringing the phone in, before when you had the CD, you couldn't do anything else with it apart from sticking in a CD player. But now, as soon as you get your phone out to play something or to Bluetooth it to your phone, to the car, however you do these things, you're straight away into, here's a phone that we know will do all these other things that we really like.
So not only do I think we're losing out on those, I'm going to say, amazing CDs. They might not be amazing at the time, but they do help your child's development.
Oh, they were great for journeys.
But also, as I mentioned before, music with mummies. I think with COVID, at groups and activities like that would have stopped. Those people who are doing it have gone and got other jobs where they can now work from home. And I wonder, since COVID, how many of those preschool activities, those nursery things like music with mummies and all those sorts of things have come back. Because before you even get to school, there's a lot of language development that's being missed. Yet parents don't know about this phonological awareness. They don't know why we should listen to these songs, what the benefit is. It's nice, easy, simple, rhythmic playing word games.
That's helping to strengthen those connections. But it's also helping to strengthen that understanding of like how language works and that oral language, that kind of that shared interaction.
Yeah.
So I think it's that bit as well. So it's not just the fact that the skills aren't having that chance to be supported. Actually, it's more about the fact that learning that happens between you and me. And actually writing is about me putting something down and you knowing what I've put. Reading is about someone's written something and you can get access to it. Or, oral language, that's about I can say something which other people will know more about me or understand more.
I think you've really hit on something there about this. I'm going to call it a sense of togetherness. My son is now 15. Phones weren't as active, or, there weren't as many things happening on phones. And even now, the three of us can still remember the theme tunes of certain TV programs that we watched together because there were not as many distractions. And I think you're right. Phones are very much a distraction, and you can have three people very easily watching three different things on devices, kind of, because that's kind of the way of the world. And I completely agree about having the CDs in the car. Literally I had Julia Donaldson on a loop. We would have Julia Donaldson on a loop, and we would all be sharing that and have a shared dialogue about it afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think, you've just made me think that there isn't as much of that, because from a very young age, children can access devices kind of independently, can't they?
And that's the issue. It's the independent. It's me in my own bubble. And there's so many positives to that can help and can support, but it's don't lose the other bit, which is also having that shared. Yeah.
But interesting, I was just thinking, actually, is if you had a CD player and that stack of CDs, it was so easy for a 2-year-old, 1-year-old to put a CD, put it in, maybe scratch it a bit, close it, push play, and they weren't necessarily counting. We're talking probably pre-number zone, but they would recognise the shape as that shape. When that shape came on, the one I liked came on.
And then you're getting into...
So there was recognition and that personal choice, but it was really easy to access. You can't give a phone to a 2-year-old and go put on a CD. It was a really simple device. And I think they're also missing out on that preference and choice. So they're showing those things.
Yeah.
And what I would say about devices is there is a lot of thing about children on devices. Us adults model that being an adult is about being stuck to your phone. We are literally glorifying it to our children. So if you want your children to come off their phone, you need to put your phone down a long time before they will. And I don't mean like for an hour. I mean you literally need to really reframe how you're using your phone around your children. Even if you're going to miss out on things, if you want your children to use it less, you have to model it.
And it's just, and I think it's about why am I doing this? What's the importance? Because there's so much discussion around how powerful the assistive technology is and all of that kind of stuff in terms of within your phone, within your laptops, particularly for learners with literacy difficulties. But what we're not remembering is if we've got too much of the other clouding of all the other stuff they can do in it, actually they're not paying enough, there's not enough attention to the screen readers, the accessibility options, because actually they don't really be bothered with that. And it is about, you've got to separate out what is it we want them to know, and we want them to be aware of the world around them.
Yeah.
And that shared interest between us and giving more of that modelling of what we want.
I always remember when my youngest was born, all the books were saying, you must make sure you're using lots of language at home. You must do lots of talking. And we really tried hard to have maybe or just narrate what you were doing to try and tell them, oh, I'm washing up a bowl. And you do all this stuff because you're thinking it's going to go in. And you think you do really good. And then your first child starts talking at whatever age. And then when you have your second child, because there's so much conversation going on between you and the first child, it's 2.5 year gap, and you are asking them, and there's a constant. Your second child, in our situation, spoke much sooner, was making sounds because there was so much language going on. And another side effect of having those devices is we are not communicating. We're not talking. We are. And you see it as you're going down the road, you see parents with kids in pushchairs and the parents are on the phone. And I know people do it kind of at home. They're kind of just on their phone. And it's so easy to think, I don't do this, but actually look at your time and how much you spend on your apps. And actually, are you really present with your children and having those conversations? Not at the dinner table. It's the random times in the car. And in the car, you could be putting on a CD if you still can, or singing along. But are you doing something together? And
it is that consciousness, isn't it? And when I think about it, there had to be a consciousness years ago. My son loved Tractor Ted, and he got to the point where he had to choose the DVD he wanted, and then he had to go and put it in the DVD player, with his sticky finger marks over it, and we got through a few tractor Teds, a few bit the dust. But, you know, and I think it does come back to actually devices are instant. We all know that, don't we? You know, the way that certain media platforms are set up, there is no end to the scrolling. So there isn't that, and let's pause and let's think, what am I going to do next? There is a never-endingness, whereas actually to consciously have to decide which DVD or which CD are we, and have that conversation, are we going to listen to, you know, today, and then the child be able to maybe listen to it as they go to sleep, so it can be used in different ways. But I think there has to be a consciousness, and I think it is from home and school, and I also think that I've still got my lovely, they're a bit bedraggled, but my lovely Julia Donaldson books that are cardboard, and I think that's another thing as well. Actually, allowing children from a very young age to, go and get the book, because it can be in many different formats. But I think the idea of children going to get the book, giving the book to a parent, a grandparent, a carer, a grown-up, that is please read that to me. I mean, how wonderful is that they can present something which means please read this to me, without them having to actually vocalize that. They can just pass the object to ask for it to be read to them. I think that's all really important as well.
And the whole thing about the choices is about, actually, what we're talking about here is phonological awareness. So it's that kind of thinking around, actually, in order to make a choice with which CD you want, you'd have to be aware that there is words on that. It might be the picture, but you're also starting to associate the words that are there, and actually they're meaning something which I like. Because actually, as we get older, and as our young people leave school and they move on into society, they need to make choices about things. And it can be a choice on Spotify, it can be a choice on their streaming, whatever. But they're starting to, so they need, that understanding around, like, the words, thinking about word awareness, all of those skills are so key, that letter at the start, isolating that letter so that I can actually be able to make the right choice, because I know roughly what letter it might start with. Or if I'm using predictive text, or if I'm using any of those great tools, I still have got to have a little bit of an idea around the way that the language works. And I think that's so important, that for families as well, to create, it's that consciousness you were saying there, Ginny, but it's that purposeful. I mean, I've started getting a Sunday paper at the weekend now, just because I'm like, right, we need to, but we need to actually have, because there's loads of bits to it. I've chucked the sport section over at Andy. There's no fun bit in it anymore, no Fun Day Times or any of the cartoons. So I'm like, well, that's a pain. But there's a recipe one, and George is loving to start cooking, my son. And so actually, you start to have an interest, even if you're looking at the pictures, what should we cook next, or talk about next? You're starting to get an interest in something else, which is print-based. And that's key. The comics are great, albums, children's albums, the match albums, the Guinness Book of Records. I tell you, this year's Guinness Book of Records has outdone itself. It's brilliant. Not that I'm plugging anything, but
Not at all. So we're obviously talking about this for children, and we're doing all the nursery rhymes. This sort of thing is, children obviously go, okay, so I've now got a child maybe in year 4, still struggling in this area, but they're obviously going, I can't do nursery rhymes because they're too childish. So as children get older, what can we as we move away, what can we do instead?
So we need to know that what will make a difference. So if you know what makes a difference in early development, and in that those foundations that will create those connections in the brain, it's the same skills, it's the same experiences, but in an older context. Or depending, again, if you've got choices from your young people, what they like, they might want to have something which they loved, when they were younger. But actually, it is around looking at we've got some brilliant resources out now. You've got some fabulous comics that are there. Deco comics are brilliant. You've also got I love the old raps, so I love Christian Foley stuff, which he does nursery grime, but he also does lots of grime and rap and again, you're being an author of a story by creating a script where you're doing something like that. So playing around, smash hits, where you had the songs, the words to the songs, just having the words to favourite things.
And I think that bit with the nursery rhymes and grime, it's not the nursery rhyme that is bad. It's maybe the very childish music that comes with it.
Yeah.
But what they have is nice, simple, easy to understand, less abstract. Because you can bar, black sheep, have you any wool? It's like a sheep or wool. I'm visualizing it. It's helping me understand it. If we're going into other stuff about relationships or anything like that, which Adele's singing about, it's like, I don't understand the words. It's harder for me to understand. So the nursery rhymes are simple language. They're less abstract. They're really easy to understand. And just changing how that's delivered can make it age appropriate, but still keep that really simple language that they can help them understand and pick apart. As you said, it's not just sounds. There are words in here that they can start to differentiate.
Do they rhyme? Do they not rhyme? Actually, do they sound okay within this rhyme that works with this music or whatever we're doing? But also, ChatGPT or any of those kind of AI generated programs now, you can get them to write anything. They could write a song about the young person, their interests. This is the level of their literacy level. These are the sounds we're working on in the classroom. And actually we only want it to be 4 lines long. So you can change it around, and then you can send things home for them to have at home. Something silly about the family dog or the family cat. So you're involving everyone in the same end goal, which is basically that we're practicing and thinking about sound and the way that language works and being able to predict and manipulate and change and hear those sounds.
And I think it's important. Also, we come back to actually, like you're saying about the family dog or whatever. If it is of interest to an individual, they are going to be far more engaged than if it's too simple or too difficult. But actually, we start bringing in the name of the family dog, and they're engaged. They want to go home. They want to talk about it. They want to share it. If it's a rap, it kind of brings it alive for them, which I think is so important.
I think, Sarah, you shared a video, or I watched one after talking to you about the grime.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it is it was a teacher delivering it, but there was bits for the children to respond.
Yeah, and they respond beautifully.
So there's a rhythm where the children know when they're expected to respond. So like,
predictability.
And they're doing all of that. And as that goes, you can have children who could be doing the grime themselves and others. So it's not just a case of, we do this for this group. Actually, it's a classroom activity that everyone is involved in at different levels, because you can have some children who are writing their own grime. You can have others who are just delivering it, and others who are just, it's a class activity. And that class activity where everyone's kind of working at that level, but still together, is what you want, that togetherness, which is what you were saying, Ginny.
Yeah, and I think as well what you need to think about is, okay, so that means you need to timetable it in, because that's often the case as well. Just be aware this is going to be important. This is going to create those strong foundations. It's going to help those literacy learners who may be struggling, but it's also going to help create that class culture of this is good fun and we're playing with language and we're all learning together. But that means, maybe 5-10 minutes every morning, you have a bit of something like that. I always say that that feeling you get, when you're all singing a song together, when you go to I'm going to say nightclub, which makes me sound very old, but, a nightclub or those years ago, or you would go out with friends together and you might also, a song comes on you like, and you all start singing it. You get that cortisol rush, you get that feeling of all knowing the same language. And that's what we need in our classrooms. So you feel good about it. You feel good about language and sounds and working together with that.
I did see recently talking about going to nightclubs.
I was hoping you weren't going to say you did see me in a nightclub, Dale, but here you go.
No, different parts of the country, I think. But it was literally, I went, oh, that looks interesting. It's retro, back to 90s and the millennium. I went, great. When's it on? Oh, good. It's actually on. It's a daytime club in 3 to 9, so I can still go to bed early.
Yeah, I think it's something like an over 30s club, it said. I was like, over 30s?
Yes.
I'm like, that over 30s? Please. Yeah, and I think the over 50s ones ends at 2. Goes 12 till 2. That's fine for me. I like that. It's great.
But there is certain songs, I'm going to say Venga Boys, things like that. Ginny remembers Venga Boys.
Tail.
But
I
it's
was more
such
a
a
salt and pepper
simple...
girl.
Oh, but
R&B.
Venga... There is... reason I say Venga Boys is it was such simple music that you could put that CD on now, and my daughter knows Venga Boys, and it's sort of such simple songs, simple thing, rhythmic, predictable, and it's what we all like. Most of the big summer hits that have ever been are generally repetitive songs that you learn and you can enjoy.
And even better than that you've got a dance routine to. Absolutely smash it then, because you've got the moves, the language, and everything happening.
Yes.
I was talking to a friend of mine's daughter, and she's doing A-levels, and she said the highlight of her week is going into the big hall. They put the music on. They all do the dance moves, and actually, it is that togetherness, isn't it? But I also find that songs can bring generations together. I find that really. I know you were saying about Elvis, Sarah, but they do bring generations together. I think another thing that is really interesting is I had a child in my class, very, very quiet, very, very quiet. And I'd been to see The Greatest Showman, which I loved the film. And I've always loved having music in my classroom. And the song, what was it? When that lady sang Never Enough, that beautiful opera singer. And this boy just came out of his shell and just started singing this, and he found himself through singing this song, and he found self-esteem, and through that song that he'd obviously listened to loads and loads at home, and then I happened to play it in class, and everyone just went, whoa. And he found his voice through that one song. And I think, the power of songs, the power of repetition, it once again, it takes away that kind of fear, doesn't it? It's just very, I don't know. I just think very liberating. Yeah.
It is. It's very liberating. And I think like The Great Showman is great. I mean, there's so many children. This Is Me, the This Is Me song is so powerful, but again, it's that understanding that words make us feel in a different way. And when you add music to that as well, that's the root of comprehension, is that not only are we now thinking about phonological awareness, identifying words, we're also thinking about, if I change the parts of that word to what word it is, it might make me feel different to if it's this word. Then you're into emotion, and I can then express myself differently. And this is what it's that curious. Let's be curious about language. Let's be curious about sound. But let's bung the radio on in the mornings, and the whole family be singing along to things.
Yes.
And dancing. That's a fabulous togetherness activity.
Yes.
My youngest, we go road trips, and we're very traditional. I'm the driver, you're the DJ.
Nice.
Yeah.
But great. Yeah.
It's great. Not mixtapes. It's you're the DJ. You're on Spotify. You are picking your music. And I go, and she'll put some really random stuff on. I'll go, oh, have you heard of this? And we'll listen to it. And she put something on. I went, oh, you do know House of Pain, Jump Around? And she was like, no. I said, you'll love it. I put it on. And then obviously of our generation, we know all the words. And my daughter is just looking at me going, what is this song? How do you know all the words? This is so cool.
And please don't jump around.
So obviously she was only 14 at the time. It's not the best words in the song, so don't use it in school. But she just sat there, watched it, added it to her liked, listened to it lots. And then about 3 weeks later, we went to a wedding. This song came on, and she just looked at me, dragged me up onto the dance floor. Her friend was there, and me and my daughter knew all the words. And it's a very rhythmic, very fast, hard. But it was a really lovely moment. But it was that sharing music.
Yeah.
Is so important, and it's sharing it both ways. Don't just go, this is my music. You need to listen to theirs and take theirs on and be open to it.
And I think it's then as well when you start, as I think Ginny and I were talking about, my son loves Elvis, so he's 9. And actually, as I said, I like R&B, so I was a little bit like, okay, that's fine. And actually, we've started looking at some of the songs. He wanted me to print them out so he could look at the words. To the Jailhouse Rock, and I was like, please no swearing. But it's really interesting as well, because you start looking at the words, and as we said at the beginning, I didn't know it said that, because you kind of get used to kind of saying or whatever that might be. Then you look at the words and you go, very clever, actually, quite cleverly written. And then you can start interrogating that song in a very different way, because you're starting to look at interesting way they've put those words together.
And that's like we were saying, going back to in year 6, going back to nursery rhymes and seeing them completely differently. Yeah. Going back to a song you've heard so many times, but you've never actually seen written down, and reading it and going, I didn't know it was about that.
Maybe I shouldn't be singing this. I didn't realise. Yeah. But again, it gives you that critical thinking as well about language. So you're moving all of a sudden from phonological awareness to actually that kind of like whole thing around comprehension and critical thinking. And why did they choose those words? And what do they want to convey by that song? And the whole thing around songs being around somebody conveying an experience or an emotion or a feeling or breakup or whatever it is. And actually, suddenly you're starting to, just some beautiful bits of literacy. So for those older learners, great, let's write our own. What do we want to say? How are we going to, what kind of words do we know we could use? What would the soundtrack be? So again, you've got those older learners.
So if I said Eminem and Stan, do you know it, Ginny?
Oh gosh! And then you listen to it each time you hear, you're like, oh, yeah.
It's a song which is an Eminem song, but you'll put it on and you would just listen, and everything else in the world doesn't matter. I listen to this song. I listen to the words. I listen to the story. I listen to the journey, and then the ends, and it is just like there's a lot in there. And as he references, it's a really well written song. Yeah. It's amazing, and it's those sorts of things where you can say, "Oh, songs are simple and songs are this." No, and that is a very obvious one you can follow. And there are other ones I never even listened to. I knew the song "Do You Like Pina Coladas?"
Yeah.
Do you know that song?
Yes.
What's it a story about?
It's not about pina coladas.
No, obviously not.
It's about a stale marriage.
Oh.
Where the husband and the wife write a personal ad. So do you like pina coladas? That's the personal ad. That's one of them puts out in the newspaper. So as the other one responds, they arrange a date, and the husband and wife meet up at the bar or the restaurant on a date, not knowing all this stuff about each other.
Whoa. Every day's a school day, Dale.
Every day's a school day, isn't it? Listen to that.
Do you know what?
I learned that from my daughter because it was used in the Guardians of the Galaxy film. And she liked the song and said, "You know about this?" I went, "What?" And she went, "Listen." And I listened. I'm like, oh my gosh. I've listened to that song so many times. We all sing along to the chorus, but kind of not really listen. But yeah, that's the story.
But it is that incredible power of songs and of music. And I think, we mentioned about the nursery grime and Christian Foley. His PhD he's doing at the moment is in rap education. And he uses it to get children and young people who are disengaged, out of education or back into education through rap.
But we have come on such a long way. I still find it quite entertaining that apparently in the 80s, the Birdie song was in the charts.
Yes.
Black Lace wasn't kind of just a party thing. Again, Black Lace was in the charts, and all those songs were in the charts. So you're kind of going, yes, for 10, 20 years after that, that would make sense to maybe use those songs. But now where we are, we need to use that modern style that everyone thinks that needs to be in schools, that needs to be in the education system, that actually is interesting, and it's reflecting what children want and what children do at home. We need to have that reflected in the classroom. So rap education makes sense. I would have no idea how to do it, but it is something that should be there more and more.
And it's just a way, again, of looking at how words are used and how words are put together to convey feelings and thoughts and stories. And it's stories. And I think it all comes back to, again, years ago, culturally, how did we survive? By sharing stories. And it was through songs and nursery rhymes. That's the kind of origin of nursery rhymes from the very beginning. And it's to make information easily importable within our cultures and our communities. So, yeah.
And I think it comes back. I think it all comes back to interaction. I think everything that we've spoken about actually comes back to interacting with one another. When I first started teaching reception, we did have jolly phonics, and it was the sound and the movement, and that worked very, very well, in my opinion, for many, many children. And I think we need to keep this interaction. We need to keep the energy. It can actually become a little bit stale and be seen to a means to an end, potentially, because there is a test, and actually it's about going, actually, let's immerse ourselves in it. Let's all enjoy it, because that is how we actually retain it. We're going back to me and Duran Duran and my lyrics, joking apart, but actually I enjoyed that. I was moving around, dancing badly in the 80s. But actually, don't you think, Sarah, we do need to get back to that bit of sharedness?
And an understanding. And I think there's that kind of fixation, phonics, and kind of like, this is, they can't do it or they can do it. And it's like, no, let's look at, actually, that's phonemic awareness. So that's that one subset of phonological awareness.
Yes.
And actually, that doesn't come without that.
Yes.
So you can't just have that phonics and that phonemic awareness. You can't just understand that letter and sound correspondence if you haven't got a curiosity about sound and letters and the way that you can manipulate and change and make a silly song or a silly rhyme, or make a swear word, whatever you're doing with it. So, and you've got to actually come back to the fun.
Yeah.
It's got to be, I still remember my phone number from when I was 13. Just know, when you think back to that, the stuff that you can remember. I can't remember so many other things, but at the time that was important to me.
Yes.
I remember all the adverts.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you remember Kiora?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And you just remember the adverts, and that song's in my head whether I like it or not. And it's just, the adverts used to be so good. They often with a rhythm, a simple song, and it would get stuck in your head.
But what's happened there is you've really had a strong association. You've had that connection has got that beautiful memories with it as well. And rhubarb and custard, for some reason, I always watched it when I was eating my dinner when I was young. And if I hear that, I can't. That's, thank you, Jen. And actually, I can visualize myself sat at my table in my front room. But again, there's that whole change in the way we kind of even watch TV. Because, you used to have 3:30 or 3:15 when the children's program started. Then you'd have the set of them. Now a child might like Bluey, which is a fabulous program, nothing wrong with it. But what they then do is they watch Bluey for 2 hours, because they can just keep watching it. And you've not got that variety of the different parts of the great. You get a great message with it, but you've got to have some of the other stuff in there, the interest, the variety that gives you all that kind of menu that you need.
Definitely. So let's end with, what was your favourite nursery rhyme, Sarah?
I'm a little teapot. Short and stout, which I never was short. So that's quite interesting.
Ginny?
I think it was Polly Put the Kettle On.
Oh, we both like our tea.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, it all comes back to tea with me. So, yeah, Polly Put the Kettle On, I think. What was yours then, Dale?
See, I think from my childhood, I don't remember, but I liked Bar Bar Black Sheep when my kids were young, because it was always pick a colour. So it was always change a colour. And the other one is mainly because my wife, because we've got two girls, she was the sort of thing that actually pointed out that most children's things are quite sexist. It was always the man and his wife. So she always changed Old MacDonald to Mrs. MacDonald had a farm. And it was things like that. She'd always say, oh, the farmer and her husband. But so those two things have stuck in my head, because actually they are someone's story, but you can adapt it. Which is also, again, you can't just say old. You've got to be able to say Old MacDonald has a rhythm. So you can't just put something else. It's got to be able to be said in that rhythm.
Yeah.
So again, there's that sort of thing that when you play with it, that actually, when you say the colour, so instead of saying black, you might say deep dark purple. You know you've got to say it really fast to squeeze it in. So that sort of playing with a nursery rhyme, I loved watching the kids do. Or it'd be a really weird bit, like when you sing Happy Birthday and someone's got a really long name, it really mucks up the rhythm. But yeah, I can't remember from my childhood though.
I was just thinking then as well, some of the wonderful language that I remember actually. And I was just trying to, in the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, because I just loved all of, and that again was just like using some very nonsense words, making up different things, putting words together, and just again, it's playing around with language.
It's like On the Ning Nang Nong. I used to love
Yes.
On the Ning Nang Nong. Do you know what that is? They were lovely. I can't remember the full thing, but On the Ning Nang Nong, where the cows go bong and is it the teapots jibber jabber joo? But it just that the richness of the language and I used
and those sounds.
Yeah, and I think saying it back was kind of exciting because there were so many words of nonsense in such a small amount of time. Yeah, gosh, isn't it amazing how memories just come back?
But it's interesting because you two talk about the richness of the words and that, and I'm literally going, nothing. But I don't know if that is, this sort of thing, I'm unpicking things in my life. Is that because of just the way my childhood went? Is it my neurodiversity? Or it could be both. But people talk about that, and I'm really trying, and I realise, and lots of people comment on how it's often a really good thing that I use simple language. I don't use big, long words. I don't know what they all mean. I struggle. And is that, I don't know what it is, but it's sort of thing I'm really trying to work on and improve. So it's become a focal thing for me. Enjoying language and noticing language is something that I'm having to work on. It doesn't come naturally.
But I think that's really interesting, because I think that's one of the things that we struggle with actually in our classrooms today, is that we are assuming, like Ginny and I are talking about lots of kind of experiences that were really rich for us. They may not actually be, and so rich for those learners who are struggling, because they might have been there in those early childhood experiences and not been relevant, not actually made a difference. And I talk a lot about my son purely because I've had so much experience in schools, and it's when it's your child and you can see it right up in front of you, you're like, wow, I didn't realise this was even a thing. And for him, audio stories, audiobooks, nothing, absolutely no interest. When I read to him, when it was picture books, great. When it was a longer bit of text, actually, he's like, how many are you going to read? We have to negotiate how many pages I'm going to read. It's like, because he knows I like it. It's not because he enjoys it. And actually, that's around how much processing of the information, how he processes it, how long it takes, how much more difficult it is when it's just words. And so for him, as I said, I think previously, an illustrated Harry Potter has enabled him to have a picture of something that I'm reading about. So while I'm talking about it, he's looking at the picture to kind of explore some of the words I'm using, what that might look like in this picture. And actually, we've got to be aware that if a learner isn't showing interest, or a child or a young person isn't showing interest in something, it's not because they can't do it. It's because however you're presenting it at that point is not giving them the thing that their brain needs. And we're really clever as humans, knowing if that's not giving you something, no point paying any more attention to it.
Yeah.
So we need to find the thing that will help you there with the words. I've got loads of solutions for that, Dale. So there you go. Next time.
I better say we'll have a chat afterwards. But it is interesting that people love maths, people love English. And I used to think they were polar opposites. You couldn't have both. Apparently, that's just what we were told. You can have both.
Of course.
So apparently, it was an NFER thing I heard. Apparently, in the 80s or 70s, in England, if you were good at maths but rubbish at English, they'd say you're rubbish at English, concentrate on the maths. In France, they said the opposite. He's good at maths, so don't worry about maths. Focus on the bit where he's struggling.
And let's find out how he learns in that area. What's the most effective, successful way for him?
So basically what kind of could have happened with me is I was good at my logic, so they focused on the logic side, and that English side just was left. Not completely, but it just wasn't pushed, whereas actually that's where I needed the support, and it's partly where I am today. But it's that sort of things we were told as a child to believe in, or this is the way of the world. It isn't. And
You should be
anyone
top.
can enjoy anyone can enjoy language, but if you do those stuff which is boring, that is not interesting, all you end up doing is putting up walls to that. My colleague John will never read for pleasure. There is something about it. We talk about it all, and it was just something he cannot do. Even if it would be good for him, even if it's a really good book, he buys the odd book because it's recommended to him, but he never sits down and reads it.
But what about manuals? What about instruction things?
He'll read that.
But that
He
could
will
be his
read
reading for pleasure. That's the other thing I think as well, is we've got quite narrow definitions. What does it mean for you to read for pleasure? It means accessing print to give you some information or take you somewhere that makes you think about something and in a way that's pleasurable for you.
And interesting, my daughter, who hates reading, year 11, hates reading, does really well on the reading tests at primary and greater depth, loved it. And it was somebody suggested, why don't you try a non-fiction book?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've always been trying to get her into a story. And so I bought her a book on psychology.
Fabulous.
And she's actually going to quite like it. So again, we think of it has to be fiction because it's story, because that's what lots of us like. But it doesn't. It does not have to be. If there is somebody they're interested in, buy a biography, but also buy a book. But yeah, there are lots of different things out there.
Basically allow children, individuals, all of us to go into a bookshop and see what they are drawn to. You know, I don't know why I'm doing that, drawn to, but, you know, and actually it may depend what day it is. You know, I think we just need to be more kind of open to what text draws us on that day.
And giving chances to browse and choose stuff which is like you don't know. Like in the library, I think libraries try hard, but they are still a bit kind of, you know, some of them, they try hard to be more interesting. Going to a bookshop,
love it.
Do you know, now I'm like, they've upped their game.
Yes.
You know, and they've needed to.
What I liked about libraries, because it was free.
Yes.
And
absolutely. Yeah.
And you could, when I was a child, I don't know what it is now, you could take 7 books at a time from our local library.
Yeah.
You could go 3 safe bets and then some randoms that you may have just liked the picture on the cover, but that's as far as you got, and you would give it a go. And you could go away and you might go, no, this isn't for me. Or you might go, wow, this is something else. But I like the fact that
you can do that. Yeah.
You can gamble when you're in the library.
And actually, I think for families, that's good. That's a really good thing to say as well, Dale. Actually go down there and maybe you can choose 3 and then let me choose one that I think you might like, or you can choose one that you just like the cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Choose something. You know, you might like this, choose 3 of them, but actually you need to choose something else just to widen your experience and try something else. Cool. Any last words before we wrap up?
Never say that, Dale.
Well, last words. Have you ever said any? No, that's sounds ominous, that, doesn't it?
I guess I was going to say then about libraries as well, story tapes and story CDs. Tapes, listen to me, tell them over 50. But the CDs, you know, actually getting them. Problem is now that no one has a CD player. So when I go to the library, they've got loads of CD things, and I'm like, how else could they lend out a story?
Some of them, there is an app so that you can do audiobook downloads.
Yeah.
And there is an app, I can't remember what it's called, but we did it on the Listening Books podcast. There is an app that libraries can put their library into, which you can access.
Yeah. And the worst thing is they've told me this every time I go into the library and I still haven't done it. Because again, the problem with all of these things, it's another thing to do.
Yes.
And so actually it needs to be as easy as possible. Maybe I was thinking of talking to the library about having a QR code that when you go in, you can just scan that as a parent and then you just download it there. Something which makes you do it then and there.
So basically the way it works is there is an app, which is basically an audiobook app, but then you have to connect a library to it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, so there is 2 steps. You can't just download your library's app. You download this app and then you add like that library into it, which is a little bit confusing, but it works well and it is free.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
And you can also get listening books, which is it says loads of options as well. But however they're accessing, however you want them to be listening, you want them to be hearing those words. That's the main thing we're after, is not sitting somewhere silent. We want music. We want stories. We want anything. And ideally, we want something which is maybe a bit of rhyming and a bit of predictable. So you're learning and you're predicting and your understanding increases.
And there's that joint conversation about the words, about the kind of like how, if it's funny, if it's whatever else, but that you're actually, you're having that shared interaction around it.
Definitely. Anything from you, Ginny?
No, reiterating that, don't be scared about taking a story, a book with a rhythm and a rhyme and changing something, change the voice, change the accent, add some instruments. It's about that shared experience. I don't think it, and I think we've said this, it's not about I'm going to tell you the story. It's about we're going to enjoy this together. Giving, when it gets to a certain part, a child does a certain instrument, do you know what? I'm very excited about this whole thing, just talking about it, because it is just about making it so that everyone joins in without kind of realizing they've all got their bit to do and they can all join in with, it's just about enjoyment.
And it's active. It's active listening. Yes. I think that's the big thing, as you were saying there as well, Dale. It's an active thing together.
Yeah.
And I think enjoyment and active are the two bits. It's not something we have to do. It's something we should look forward to doing, because in reality, this is precursor to so many things. It's going to help that literacy, and even it's going to help everything. So we need to, it's not something we have to get through. It is so important, but it also needs to be enjoyable. And that enjoyment means you're going to do it more, and you're not going to put those barriers up to it. So whatever age that child or young person is, it's got to be enjoyable for them, and it's something they look forward to.
That we all look forward to, isn't it? Actually, the person who is initiating this, they need to have the enjoyment and pass that enjoyment on, isn't it?
And I think making it almost like reflecting your children in the classroom, reflecting that, and actually making it something you want to do will make that enjoyment grow. If you're just getting it off the shelf, you still get that Johnny Phonics CD out and go, let's listen to this, and you're sitting in silence while you listen, that's not what you do. As Ginny says, you do the dances, you do the things, you make it active, you ask them to vote which is their favourite, you get them to, you do those things around it to make it active and enjoyable. So thank you for coming on the show today. I actually got to speak more this time, which apparently was an aim of yours, was to speak less and me to speak more. You did well.
We worked together, Dale. We worked together. We decided on a smart target, Ginny, didn't we?
We did.
And then we decided on what it would look like. And then we sort of like, how do we scaffold it to enable you to do that? So,
it sounded like you had a planning meeting without me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I feel rejected. I will find some links to share. I'll get Sarah to send me some links to the grime. So I'll put those.
I can give you, Dale.
Wakelet, excellent. So I'll put those in the show notes along with Sarah and Ginny's contact details and links to their books as well. And as always, you'll find the show notes on our website or wherever you listen to the podcast. So thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. You can find links to subscribe across different podcast platforms on our website, which I've recently updated and added YouTube on, because you can now listen to us through YouTube. And if you aren't following us on social media, on Twitter, we're at The Sencast, on Facebook, The Sencast, on Instagram, The Sencast, on TikTok, Sencast, and even we're starting to look at Blue Sky, because we're not sure what's going to happen with Twitter. And also, please use social media to share The Sencast with others. Now, everyone knows B Squared are helping schools to show those small steps of progress pupils SEND make, and over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary schools. It's got different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data and comparing your SEND and non-SEND pupils really, really simple. And it also reduces teacher workload by only having one system to use. And our new features help simplify report writing and so much more, make it so good. And also it's cheaper if you're just using one system. If you are interested and want to find out more, you'll find a link to the website and to book a meeting with me in the show notes. And you can also find out about all the other stuff we do as well. It's all on the B Squared website. So thank you for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of the Sencast. It is goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from Rhubarb and Custard. Da-da-da-now.
Da-na-na-now.